What is up, everyone? Welcome to another weekly news video. We have a few things to talk through today, none more important than this BGS grading scandal debacle, whatever you want to call it. It's pretty ludicrous in my opinion. So let's, start with that. So if you saw my video last night when I broke this, essentially, and I didn't break it, a few other people had this as well, but essentially they came out and had this, display out at the Mint Collective in Las Vegas. Very clearly indicated that they're going to, change their grading scale. They've since come out and clarified a few things within this, and there's some pretty laughable things within this. So if you weren't aware, basically, it looked as though last night and yesterday that they were going to, now consider 10s based on a card that had 4, subgrades of 9.5, which was pretty ludicrous, and we talked to that last night. What they've since come out today and done, and it goes to some of the backtracking that I alluded to or I anticipated last night in my video, was that, what they're saying, well, now 495s are not going to be a new Gem Mint 10, it's going to be considered Mint Plus. I'll get to that in a second. Now, if you want a Gem Mint 10, you need to have 1 10 at least of a subgrade and then, 3 9.5s. You can't have any 9s in there, which is, pretty interesting. And I'll get to my thoughts on this in a second, because we spoke about last night how this is going to have, severe impacts on some of the pricing within, the card market for BGS 9.5s. But one comment I want to get to first is if you play this video from, I think it's Beckett's chief engineering officer, he talks through going through months and months of, internal discussion and external discussion with collectors and businesses and all this sort of stuff to get to the point where they were comfortable enough to make this change to their grading standard, right? From their perspective, that they're keeping the standard the same, I should say, but it's changing, their grading scale. But what I find, pretty interesting with that statement, right? If you spent months and months and months planning this thing and talking to people, like you said, how did you have this show up, at the Mint Collective, where you've got 1 Gem Mint 10 as a 10 and needing to have 4, 9.5 subgrades, so much so to the point that when you look at it later today at the card show, you're now seeing this, where you've got, hang on a minute, no, you don't need 4 9.5s, you need at least 1 10. I find that a bit hard to believe that that was their plan all along. I touched on in my video last night that, I wouldn't be surprised if they backtracked on this, similar to what they did with those new label introductions out at, I think it was either the Mint Collective or the National last year, where they put all these banners up, put up all this signage of these new labels, and then the next day was like, oh, sorry guys, just kidding, that's not real. We don't know why we put it there. I find it hard to believe they planned for months and months and months, and something like this, as important as what this grading change or this scale change is to their business, they would have made that mistake. I think they wanted to test the waters, and I think what ended up happening was they got so much pushback, so they decided to change their mind. The reason why I think this is a lot worse than what they initially planned was because you've basically now screwed over collectors and investors that had Gem Mint Plus cards, right? You had cards that were 9.5s, previously considered Gem Mint when they had 4 subgrades of at least 9.5. BGS are now saying they're considered Mint Plus. Now, Neo Cards and Comics did a deep dive on this today, and he basically talked through how I think like 80% or something along those lines of cards that were considered Gem Mint were at least 9.5. So basically 80% of this population, and don't quote me on the numbers, go check out his video, but it was quite substantial, of the population are now basically being bumped down a grade. All these Gem Mints are no longer considered Gem Mints. And the hobby is incredibly superficial when it comes to these things. It's why, even though technically BGS's 9.5 was always considered on par with PSA's 10, PSA 10 still considered and grabbed a premium. It's because the hobby is artificial, or superficial, I should say. People place value on things they're seeing. They don't really look at the card. The label is everything. So not only is this going to sort of detract, in my opinion, away with some of the prestige and, higher prices people pay for pristine cards, you're now going to see probably a drop in price of existing, 9.5s that were previously Gem Mints, because now they're Mint Pluses. This is going to impact a lot of people. And I know some people are saying, let's wait and see what the market actually looks like in a few months. But, the hobby is very superficial. I find it so shocking that they decided to make this call. Like, you've basically bumped down and given a big finger to all the collectors out there that, specifically chase BGS 9.5s. I find it so odd. I'm willing to bet, a lot of money that they're probably going to backtrack on this again. Neo raised a good point in that they should get rid of 9.5s altogether. I think if they got rid of the 9.5 grade, this would have fixed everything, right? Because everybody that previously had, a Gem Mint 9.5 would automatically get that Gem Mint 10. Like, yes, it sucks having the 4 9.5s, and like I said in my video the other day, it doesn't make sense from a mathematics perspective. Even, what they're doing here doesn't make sense because the average is still 9.5. But I think that is the lesser evil of going down the path of, completely bumping these down to Mint Plus. And again, I want to reiterate that point. The CEO basically says he chief engineering officer. I don't think he's the actual chief executive. Talks through going through months and months and months. They spent so many months, right, that they put this label up, spent a lot of money to make this thing, put it up at the Mint Collective where they were going to announce something so groundbreaking for the grading industry, something so groundbreaking for their own business, right? Months and months and months of planning. Yet they made that mistake and forgot to put a 10 there. That is a little bit hard to believe, in my opinion. I do not buy it at all. It's complete backtracking, in my opinion. Again, I could be wrong. That could have been a mistake that BGS have made, right? But they are pretty, laughable from that perspective, given the mistakes they've made in the past. But I just find that hard to believe, and I'm very keen to get your thoughts on this one, down in the comments below. This whole situation with, these being bumped down is so ridiculous. I think the hobby is so superficial. We're going to see reductions here. And one, element I do want to flag with regards to the hobby being superficial very quickly is with regards to these, influencer cards in the current top set. I'm not hating on these cards in any way, shape, or form. I think they are, very, very cool. I think there's going to be a lot of kids out there very excited to chase Card Collector 2 cards. Same with Sports Card Investor. But the reason why I want to say the hobby is, superficial and it has a lot of self-interest is that, Slabstox, people forget what these guys did back in 2019. These guys literally ran a pump and dump scheme that they got caught on. They were selling, monthly subscriptions, telling you to buy certain cards, telling you which cards were hot. Meanwhile, they were selling those exact same cards on their mum's eBay account. There's a whole blow-up thread talking about this. I'm not making this up. They had an apology video, and the news was so bad that literally during the whole national in 2019, they were going around and essentially doing damage control. Yet they've come, years later and now have been rewarded because the hobby, is superficial and there is a lot of self-interest and people don't really care, once a few months, subside. I'm not hating on them. I think people do have a right to change. I'm not saying that we should be having cancel culture or anything like that. I'm not a fan of the curator, but I'm not calling for him to be cancelled, right? People can do whatever they want. We can have some dialogue, but this situation just goes to show here that, people can do very bad things and then still be rewarded down the long run. I don't like elements of that, and I don't think the hobby should forget some of these things, because that, in my opinion, is one of the worst things that could have been done, right? Pumping and dumping and ripping people off is not a good look, and you can't blame it on, ignorance when you were doing it as systematically as you were. Again, read that blowout forum, but again, this just goes to show the self-interest and superficial nature, of the hobby and how it's, a little bit annoying. Now, the last thing I want to very quickly talk to is this video that I put out the same day that I put out this Beckett grading change. It's related to a very large soccer syndicate where they're basically printing and creating these fake cards, sending them into these graders, primarily BGS, who are the ones dropping the ball the most, and basically leaving poor collectors, with a very fake card in their hands that they can't do anything with, that is very, very expensive. I talk in this video, it's basically well over $1 million in terms of cards scammed. It impacts, PWCC, Golden. Basically, everybody's shifting the blame between all these businesses within the hobby, and as the collectors are the ones left holding the bag. Please check it out, because this is a very important video, not just because I made it, but we need to bring awareness to this sort of stuff. So if you haven't seen it, please check it out. Like I said a little bit earlier, check out Neo Cards and Comics video on the BGS label change. He goes into a bit of a deep dive with regards to some of the data via Gem Mint. So it is very interesting. Again, I cannot believe that they would go to all that months of planning and make a mistake like that. That's hard for me to believe, guys. I'm really keen to get your thoughts on this down in the comments below. I said in my video, last night that there'd be backtracking. I think we've seen a little bit of that already. I think it's pretty clear to see based on that error that I just showed you. I think we'll see more, to be honest, because this has been phenomenal marketing done by BGS. The only problem is it's not been marketing for them. It's been marketing for why you should be grading with, PSA. So it is what it is, guys. The hobby continues to have very dumb things done by some of these pillars. I don't buy it. I don't like it. I think it's, insane. And I'm very keen to get your thoughts. So please share those down in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.